But can he find him to cover him? See, he can't find him.
All he's got to do is reach around. There he is.
Oh, no.
What a tremendous matchup. Big smile on the face of Jake. Martel out of it.
The only blindfold match in the history of WrestleMania, I believe.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, you could count them on one hand. I mean, we could only come up with one other one.
Yeah, which was the terrible James Storm TNA one.
With his old partner, Chris Harris.
I think that's who it was with.
I'm pretty sure that's who it was with, yeah.
Well, it's best if we just forget that one anyway.
Yes. This one always, people do remember it because of the time period and because it was at a WrestleMania. It is one that people do remember.
Yeah, they do. And for what it was, they did a good job. From what I remember,
it was
but
okay.
I think that it was okay. It's sitting in my head.
It wasn't a terrific matchup, as Gorilla Monsoon just stated there in that little clip there when it ended. His generic, it was a terrific matchup line. No, Gorilla, not so much on that one.
All right, so here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to play you part 2 of this interview. It's Dan Lavransky and Rick the Model Martel. Coming up next is Title About Trivia, so if you want to get in on it, 1-855-591-6876. But here is Dan the Mouth Lavransky, Rick the Model Martel, part 2 right here on the Law Live Audio Wrestling.
For that match, because I know, a seasoned pro like yourself and Jake Roberts, you guys wouldn't, if it was a regular match, you would just probably call it all in the ring and let it unfold. But for something like the blindfold match, I'm guessing the two of you must have sat down and worked out some certain spots in advance.
Oh yeah, definitely. We had to because, as you say, it's such a different match. I mean, it's such unusual match that you have to create those situations. You have to build into these situations. So we couldn't go there just and just try it off like that. I mean, it had to be planned. We knew what we had to do and how to get there. And take our time and do it at the right time, because it was very important. Because first of all, not to get hurt, and second of all, for the reaction. The crowd reaction. And like I said, I was so happy because it made it so much easier, with the crowd reaction. Because he put his hands out there. People, they scream. So we went along with it. We played with that, and man, it was fantastic. It was really a great souvenir for me. I had a big decision after this match to take, to make. I mean, I had a big business opportunity here in Quebec that was proposed to me, and so I had to choose between my wrestling career and this business opportunity. I remember, I had a meeting with Vince, and I told him, and he couldn't believe it, and he says, "Oh, Rick, everything is, and I'm sure, it didn't please those guys, but it sure, that decision hurt me later on, when I came back, because, of course, they couldn't trust me after that, he says, well, if we put, or, if we go with him, he may leave any time,
Right.
So it did hurt me, but now where I'm at today, I'm glad I made that decision, because now, as you know, Dan, in wrestling, we don't have a union.
That's right.
We don't have a fund pension,
Right.
And back in those days, we didn't make the kind of money that these guys are making today.
Sure.
So I made that decision. And it certainly hurt me later on as far as my wrestling career. But as far as my life, my family life, and what I'm doing now, my business now is doing fantastic, and I'm glad I did. But I have to admit, when I came back, my pride was really hurt, Sure. I remember when I wrestled against Tatanka, at WrestleMania, the first WrestleMania, and I was coming back, and I remember the agent came to me and says, Rick, we want at the time because they would go over, you know, and oh man, I said, Christ, I said, you know, I'm just coming back, and you know, and there was no angle, no nothing after, you know, there was nothing. So I remember, you know, I went to see Vince. Hey, Vince, you know, what's the matter, you know? But, you know, now that I look back on it, you know, I can't blame him at all because, like I said, from then on, he couldn't trust me anymore.
Sure.
You know, he couldn't put any heat on me because you know, at any time, he knew that my priorities wrestling wasn't number one. So he needed guys that their priorities were wrestling. That's it, and that was a business decision on his part. So that's why I made a comeback in '98 with WCW, and that's another thing that not many people know. In late '97, in fall '97, I had a meeting with Vince again to come back again in the ring because now my business was doing great. I had people, you know, managing it, and I could leave, and everything was great. You know, I could. Be away, and there wouldn't be no problem. So it was going on its own. So I wanted to come back into wrestling to really finish it right. I had this sense that, you know, my career was great and all that, but it didn't finish on the right note. So I had a meeting with Vince, and there was this guy from Winnipeg. You know, we were going to team up together, and he eventually, Cyrus, you know.
Don Callis.
Don Callis, yeah, Don and I were going to come back. We had a meeting with Don, and I had met Don in Winnipeg working, you know, he was working the independent circuit, and this guy was a great talker.
He was.
And I said, you know, the long hair and all that, and that'd be great. I says, you know, we could later on go, you know, come back as a team, and then later on he could switch on me, you know, and he would become, I would be the baby face, you know, the older guy, and him the younger guy, the cocky guy, you know, you know, you're riding my coattails kind of stuff, you know, and you know, he would knock me in because I was older and I needed him, and this, you know, we had the whole thing planned out. So I met Vince with the idea, and he loved it. We were going to be called the supermodels, you know, because of that little different thing, you know, back in the 80s, right?
Supermodels,
in the 90s were the supermodels instead of the models, and we're going to have the vignettes. We're going to do the vignette. Everything was lined up. We're going to do the vignettes at that fashion cafe in New York, you know, and I remember Vince, you know, and back then the yearly contracts started. You know, guys would get yearly contract, you know, like an amount of money for the year.
Right.
And so I remember Vince says, well, okay, Rick, says, what kind of arrangements you want, you know? And I said, well, of course, you know, I'd like a yearly contract, you know. Sure, say, whatever, you know, great, you know. So now, you know, we went back and after the meetings, and then we went to work for Emile Dupré in the Maritimes because, you know, I hadn't been in the ring for a couple of years, you know, so I wanted to get my ring shape back on.
Right.
And over there in the summer for Dupré, you could wrestle every night in the Maritimes, so that would help me get my wind back. And I remember, you know, the guys we worked against every night was Christian and the other guy Edge.
Yeah, Christian and Edge.
And Christian were tag team.
Wow.
And we worked every night. And these guys were just young guys starting out.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I was like, I was the old timer of the four, and we had some, you know, all kinds of matches, lumberjack matches, and all kinds of different matches.
Uh-huh.
You know, and they never had these matches. So I would, you know, we'd have meetings, and I say, okay, you do this, do that, and so we had a really good summer. You know, we really enjoyed it, and these guys, their attitude, you could tell even then that these guys were going to do something. You know,
wow.
They were going to really have great careers.
Which they did. Yeah, they did.
And so then, you know, I was in New Brunswick, and all of a sudden, you know, I get the contract by mail, you know, by FedEx, you know, and I remember I opened this this envelope, and I looked this letter and the contracts, and it was like a 3-month contract, like a tryout thing, you know.
Oh, really?
And man, I was hot. Yeah, I was really disappointed. I was very disappointed because, you know, we talked about a yearly thing.
Sure.
And of course, at that time, as the guys handling the contracts was, you know, Brother Love.
Pritchard. Pritchard.
Yeah. So I talked to Pritchard. I called him right away. I said, look, Bruce, I said, what is this? You know, I said, we talked about a yearly contract. Yeah, Rick, but, you know, you have to keep in mind, you know, that if it was your own, it'd be fine, but you have this guy that we don't know, you know, we you know, and I can see his point, you know, that they couldn't tell how it was going to work because the other guy didn't know him.
Right.
From, Evil Adam, you know, I mean, they didn't know him. So anyway, I said, all right, you know, I thought about it, and I couldn't, you know, at this point in my career, I just couldn't go on a tryout, you know. I mean,
sure.
I thought at this point I said, look, I can't do it, you know. It's on or not. It's on or it's off, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So I took the phone. You know, first I talked with Don and I explained to him, look, you know, it's not like you. I mean, you're a young guy. You're starting. You know, sure, but me, you know, it's my last hooray. You know, I mean, that's it. You know, I mean, it's my last comeback. So finally I said, look, if you want, you know, I'm calling Eric Bischoff, and if you want to come with me there, you know, I'm not sure we'll have that opportunity because that gimmick, we can't do that gimmick because of the copyrights and stuff. I says, but I says we can do something else or whatever, you know. But him, he was like a big. Of course, I can't blame him because he was like a big WWF fan. He wanted to go to WWF. He didn't want to go to WCW.
Right.
So I called Eric Bischoff, and Eric knew me from the AWA days. You know, he was the announcer
That's
back
right.
then.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, Rick, sure. He says, get on the plane tomorrow and come and meet me. You know, sure, would love to have you. You know, it'd be great. And so I went to meet him and negotiated a contract, a yearly contract, and the biggest contract of my career. You know, I mean, and it was fantastic.
There you go. That is Rick the Model Martel. Dan the Mouth Lavransky. You spent a considerable more amount of time talking to him, though.
That's right. The whole interview went an hour and a half. We covered his entire career.